Hey guys, and welcome to another edition of GOAT Movies, the podcast for the simple movie lover, where we discuss movies we've recently seen and see if they have what it takes to become the next greatest of all time. What makes a GOAT movie? Is it quotable? Is it lovable? Is it any-able? You'll find that out today and more with me, your host, Carlos. I'm the last line of defense between you and bad movies. Mark Wahlberg's the last line of defense for the U.S. Today we're reviewing Mile 22. Hey guys, and thanks for joining us for another edition of GOAT Movies. On today's show, I am actually flying solo again. But hey, I am here for you to save you guys from bad movies and to just talk about movies in general, since that is my passion. Before we get into today's movie, which is Mile 22, another Berg, Mark Wahlberg collaboration movie, I just want to give a big shout out and a big thanks to everyone who has been subscribing to the podcast, rating and sharing it. I really appreciate it. This is what makes us keep going. And, you know, just like I say at the end of every podcast, if you ever want to be a co-star on the show, if you have a movie that you'd like for us to review, please feel free to email me at goatmoviespc@gmail.com. That's goatmovies, plural, pc@gmail.com. You can also follow the podcast at goatmoviespc on Instagram. So thank you so much to all of our listeners. I have been receiving some emails and I really appreciate it. And I just want to give a big shout out to everybody who has stood by me with this. So a big shout out to the Pate family, Adam and Kelsey, Stephen and Rachel. A big shout out to my own family, Ben and Christina Bailey. Really appreciate the love and support from you guys. I've just really enjoyed myself these last couple of months that I've been able to put these podcasts together for you guys. Really had a blast. I also want to thank the Walkers, the Grecos who are always on the show, Nick, Marion, Andrew, Lori, John. You guys have always been very big supporters of the show, so I just can't thank you enough. Nick's always texting me, when's the new podcast coming out? When's the new podcast? I'm still waiting. So thanks for keeping me on my toes, Nick. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being on the show so many times. I really enjoy having you guys on. You guys always have an open invitation, as well as everybody who listens to the show. It's an open invite. You just have to shoot me an email. Mike and his wife, Grace, thank you so much for all your help with this. Really hope to have you back on the podcast soon. Big shout out to Arlene Mullins and her family out in New York. Thank you so much for listening all the way from there. And everybody else who's reached out. There's just so many to name that I just, I could dedicate an entire podcast just to that. But we're here to talk about movies. So today we are talking about Mile 22. This is another Berg film. Really excited for it, and it is starring the lovable Mark Wahlberg. Berg and him actually worked together on a lot of movies. The last one most notably being Deepwater Horizon, and one of my favorites, Lone Survivor, where I think Mark Wahlberg did some of his best work. I want to go ahead and jump deep into this movie as soon as possible, so let's go ahead and get that rating system out of the way. Remember that we grade all our movies on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the absolutely worst movie possible, not worth your time to even go and bootleg it for free. A 10 being the absolute best movie you've ever seen, and you're going to be spending money to go see it over and over again at the movie theaters. We always give a 0.5 if we need to give it that little extra oomph, but all in all, for this movie, I am giving this movie a rating of 4.5. This movie was not Mark Wahlberg's best. This movie definitely needed a lot of work. There is a beginning, there is an end, but there is no middle. There's nothing to bring it together. You're just given all this information all at once, all this action, all these things going off at once, but nothing to really make it stick with you. So one great quote that my buddy Nick said in one of his last podcasts that he was in with us is that he remembers seeing it, but he remembers none of it. That was this movie for me. I actually fell asleep through part of it. Fortunately for me, there was a big explosion that woke me up. So I only fell asleep for about 2 to 3 minutes of it. It was honestly just non-stop action. So if you're the type of person that really likes explosions, guns, action, fight scenes, Mark Wahlberg, this is definitely the movie for you. I love all of those things, but like I've said in the past, the reason that I love movies is because I'm a storyteller. I love movies and the stories that they tell us. There was no story here. They just kind of started. They gave a big action scene in the beginning, then we're, straight at the end. It was really weird. The movie itself has not been doing too well with critics or with reviewers, and this movie, really, really needed some work. We're definitely going to get into it a little bit further down the road after we issue our spoiler alert. But the budget for this movie was $35 million. And that's not too uncommon for a Peter Berg film, especially with all the explosions that he likes to put into his movies. Opening weekend in the USA, he made $13 million and has so far grossed in the US only 19. According to the information that I have, as of today, they have only made $14 million. So, doesn't look like they're doing too hot. They may just end up breaking even, especially for those of you who really wait for the GOAT review. And for those of you who just wait till the theaters kind of slow down from that star-stricken Mark Wahlberg fandom. The movie is about an hour and a half long, so really short, compared to everything else that's been 2 hours and over. And the way that IMDb says, an elite American intelligence officer, aided by a top-secret tactical command unit, tries to smuggle a mysterious police officer with sensitive information out of the country. It's another Peter Berg film. I can't say that enough, that Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg like to collaborate together. They usually have pretty good stuff. Like I said earlier, Lone Survivor is my absolute favorite Peter Berg movie. They did a really amazing job. And one of the main reasons that I went to go see this movie is because I actually like Peter Berg and a lot of his work. I really love Deepwater Horizon. Another reason that I went to go see this is because this is actually starring Ronda Rousey, and I just think she is such a gorgeous woman. There's something about a woman who I know can kick my butt that is just appeasing to me. I would not want to challenge this woman in any way, shape, or form. But knowing that she can kick my butt, that says something. Also, I'm kind of excited for her because I see a lot of actors like her trying to make it into the movie industry. We see John Cena, Dave Bautista, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I really feel like he's the most notable person to try to make it into this world. And to be honest with you, he's actually done a pretty good job. His big breakout role was in The Rundown, which he did an okay job with that. He's had a bunch of flops, but after each one of his movies, he's actually gotten better and better, so I have to commend him for that. What's funny is that in Hollywood, you're considered a triple threat if you can act, sing, and dance. But with all these athletes, I guess you're going to have to add another category, which is kick my ass. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Ronda Rousey can definitely do that, along with Dave Bautista and John Cena, all these other wrestlers that are becoming actors in Hollywood. But good for them for trying, and I look forward to seeing more of their work. Without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and play the trailer for Mile 22, after which we'll go ahead and dive deep into this movie. So here you go, Mile 22.
Do you want to live in a world where everybody feels cozy and validated all the time? Or do you want to live in a world that works? We fight new wars. The old options, military, diplomacy, they don't always succeed. Sometimes you need a third option. That's Overwatch. According to the government, we do not exist. We're ghosts. But we are very real, and we get shit done.
I'm only gonna outline this one time. 9 pounds of radioactive isotope is missing.
It's enough to make 6 major cities uninhabitable.
He knows exactly where it is.
Stop where you are, sir. On your knees. Get out.
What do you want? I want out of the country. He's wanted for espionage.
We're talking about a corrupt, low-level cop.
You're sitting here indicates he's not so low level.
Be careful.
You fucking be careful.
Do you have men wandering our embassy?
You good there? Can I trust you?
Put me on a plane to the US and I'll give you everything.
Mind state of a gangster from the 40s.
To go. This is an Overwatch operation.
The goal is deliver that package to here, Mile 22.
Look, you know the game this is.
Take a drive.
Pray guides me by what I'm about to go through.
They got bikes, Dougie.
Pray. I'm trying to beat life cause I can't cheat death.
Brother Salvo, we're in contact, major contact.
Requesting hand of God. Got it.
Take it.
Pray.
How many miles out are we?
12.
Our angel can only stay on the ground 10 minutes. They miss that window, they are dead.
Pray.
You keep coming to me until you kill us all. Is that the game today? I'll play.
Everything I've seen made me everything I am. Pray. Fast forward, freeze frame on my pistol. Pray.
You're chaos.
I think I might be worse. I am a killer who looks like a hero.
Pray. Pray. Pray.
You feeling calm, Alice?
Not even a little. Are you?
I'm totally calm.
That's because you're mentally unstable.
Thank you.
There you have it. Mile 22 now in theaters starring Mark Wahlberg. What's so interesting about this is just like in the mid 90s, late 80s, the movies typically gave you the entire plot of the movie in the trailer itself. And this is one of the very few trailers that I've seen recently where that is really the case. So I really don't know if I should even issue the spoiler alert. But because we are going to be diving deeper into this movie, I will for sure issue the spoiler alert. So here you go, guys. Here is your spoiler alert. Red alert. Anything that we discuss after this point is completely fair game. So if you're going to go and see this movie, go ahead and put the podcast on pause and come on back and let me know what you think, if you agree with me or not. But this is your spoiler alert. So one of the things that I have to get off my chest right off the bat here is that in this movie, Mark Wahlberg portrays himself as such a badass that he actually overdoes it. And this isn't the first time that he's done something like this. If you remember him from The Departed, he tries too hard to be the unshakable, nothing bothers him, I'm such a badass, you should be scared of me just by looking at me type of person. And that just doesn't work for him. He is a badass himself. If you've actually seen him in some of his interviews, he comes off as a badass just being naturally himself. So I don't understand why he does this over and over again. It's really off-putting and it really stuck out throughout the entire movie. In this movie, his character portrays this super elite, super smart OCD person, and we only get a little bit of insight, maybe about 10 minutes into the movie, about his past. His parents have been killed, and he has to wear these rubber bands around his wrist so that he can snap and induce pain on himself so that he can focus. Because he's so smart, his brain is just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it's very distracting throughout the whole movie because anytime he's talking to anybody, they zoom in on the wrist and show you that he's flicking himself with this rubber band. It's very, very distracting. I don't understand. We get it the first time and he just never stops. It's ridiculous. If you're one of these people that's OCD, that just always has to be fidgeting or moving or doing something like that, then this is definitely the movie for you. The main character or main villain, whatever you want to call him, he is constantly counting his fingers. He will put his index finger to his thumb, then his middle finger to his thumb, and his ring finger to his thumb, and he's just constantly counting 1, 2, 3. And it's sort of this self-meditation type of thing that he does. So Mark Wahlberg has the snapping of the rubber band, and this other guy has the counting. And he is very Jason Bourne-like, doesn't very much talk or do anything. And we're first introduced to him as he's sitting in this tiny little apartment in his underwear, and he is burning his birth certificate, his passport, and everything. So it doesn't really make sense. But apparently these two are supposed to be the elite, smart people of this entire movie. And of course, throughout the whole thing, at first they don't trust each other, they don't want to be allies, but it is Mark Wahlberg's responsibility to get this guy over to the airfield, which is 22 miles away, so that he can provide information to the CIA and the US government to avoid a terrorist plot. He won't give any of this information up until he's on US soil. So they kind of come to a compromise that yes, they'll extradite him to the US, but they'll need to have the information first. He needs to be on the airplane before he does anything. And of course, he turns over some sort of hard drive that has a virus that is eating away at the data that our technicians can't decrypt in time. So this decryption algorithm or whatever that he has to provide in order for him to make it to the US is the only way that we can get this information. And of course, this is to save multiple cities from a nuclear or biochemical attack. So after many failed attempts from other organizations to try to find this biochemical attack or this nuclear powder, it is finally left to Mark Wahlberg and his elite team called Overwatch, which is ran by John Malkovich's character. He's the one that is pulling the strings behind the curtains and making sure that everything goes off without a hitch. Now, one thing that I do have to say about this movie is that it is definitely action-packed. There are a ton of fight scenes. There's tons of explosions. But again, what else is there to expect from a Peter Berg film? He does this in every single film. Now, Peter Berg also makes an appearance in this film for whatever reason I don't understand. He kind of does what M. Night Shyamalan does. He plays these little minute characters that really have no reference, but one of the main characters in the movie, portrayed by Lauren Cohen, she is, I guess, Mark Wahlberg's second in command. She's the one that he relies on and talks to the most. She's really the only one that understands that he's crazy, and you even hear it in the trailer. But she's going through some sort of crazy divorce, and her ex-husband, whose daughter is going to get her ears pierced or something like that. There's this whole storyline in there that makes no sense. And she is being watched by a divorce app or program called Wizard, which is really weird. Apparently this app monitors your emails, your text messages, your phone calls, everything. And if there's any aggression or anything like that, it stops you from doing it. And I guess it penalizes you and really helps when it comes to the legalities of a divorce. So I don't know what that had to do with any of the movie, but I guess they were just trying to portray that this woman has given up a lot in the service of her country, which leads me to my next point. Anytime that Overwatch is activated or sent in, each one of the characters has to turn in a letter of resignation. So if we think about this logistically, anytime that they are out there risking their lives, killing people, they're actually breaking the law because they're not being represented by the government. But I guess this is the government's way of plausible deniability. They have to turn in these letters of resignation, and they are collecting them as they're getting loaded into the car. It's really weird. All of this starts in suburban America, which is one of my favorite scenes, where this Splinter Cell is meeting in this one house, and it's not really clear on what they are planning, but Overwatch is onto them. Mark Wahlberg is got a sniper rifle, and he's positioned outside the house. They're trying to sneak in, and so, of course, there's a huge fight scene and a huge explosion and everything like that, and everybody just kind of walks away nonchalantly. The key point to take away from this is that there was one kid that managed to make it out, and Mark Wahlberg catches him, and right as Mark Wahlberg is about to put a bullet between his eyes, the kid looks to him and says, "You're making a big mistake," and Mark Wahlberg's retort is, "I've made many of those," and then fires the gun and kills the kid. So the big thing that this leads to is that I guess this terrorist cell was dealing with nuclear weapons or biological weapons. Again, this movie was so random that it's kind of difficult to remember it even a day later. It was really, really strange. So I guess the implication throughout the whole thing is that Russia is behind all of this and they're the ones planning the attack. But yet we're in Thailand or Korea or somewhere, and this guy who has all the information, he's already been giving information to the CIA and to the embassy. So he is a documented informant. And the house that they were supposed to go to that ended up blowing up was supposed to have all of these, I guess, nuclear weapons or biological weapons or whatever. And it didn't work out. And so after this huge explosion and this kid is killed, Mark Wahlberg and Laura, they are arguing about, the fact that this failed. But then this informant is the guy that we found in his underwear burning all of his information, because he's going to defect over to the U.S. So, of course, we've only got 22 miles to get this guy to the airport so that he can then be flown over to the U.S. and we can save hundreds and hundreds of lives. But all throughout the movie, we see, like, I don't know if it's supposed to be like the Russian ambassador or the Russian president or someone of Russian allegiance is the only real word that I can think of. They're in some sort of Air Force One type of airplane, and they're planning this thing. So the whole time you're led to believe that, hey, this attack is going down, we're minutes away from this. But yet the Korean government or the Thailand police officer, I don't know what country they were in, they are the ones that are coming across as the aggressors as well. So as an audience member, you think it's one country, but it's actually this other country that these overwatchers have no idea about what's going on. The movie itself was just non-stop action, which is great. I mean, it sucks that Ronda Rousey was one of the first ones killed in transit to this airport, but this reminded me a lot of the movie End of Watch. If you've ever had a chance to see that one, that movie, wow. I mean, even this, years later, I'm still astonished by it. That was a very, very good movie. The reason that I bring it up is because in that movie and in this one, you kind of have this scene where you run into this apartment complex or this low-income housing. There's this huge battle scene and explosions and gunshots and stuff like that. So Mark Wahlberg has to depend on this guy who they're trying to transport and Lauren in this movie. So it really just comes down to them because everybody else has been killed. Meanwhile, John Malkovich is cozy in his secure location with all his team, with aerial attacks and drones, and, you hear in the trailer, execute the hand of God, and they kill all these people. But the whole time, they're just trying to get to the airport. So to make a very long story short, everybody's dead. They barely make it to the airport on time. The plane is already taking off. Mark Wahlberg stops the car in front of it, so they have to stop and they let them on. And so Mark Wahlberg, throughout this battle scene, has had a change of heart because this guy has helped him. The guy that's played by Iko, I think his name in the movie is Lee. So all of a sudden, you see these people that are the Russian people in the airplane, and they're just kind of like looking at a watch. And the main thing is that this woman, who is the one in charge of all this, I don't know if she's supposed to represent the Russian president or, the Secretary of Defense or whatever you want to call her. She keeps looking at this locket. I thought for a long time that it was like an old-fashioned locomotive, conductor's watch. But it turns out to be a locket with a picture in it. And she just gives the final command to execute. And so what ends up happening is you have this guy, Lee, who is handed over to what they call the Angel, which is the airplane people, right? And they're handcuffing him and making sure that he's secure so that they can take off, because technically he's still a terrorist or an informant that they still need to vet. And so Mark Wahlberg's character says, hey, Lauren, go be with your children, be your mom, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And he's basically giving her a much needed vacation. So she gets into the cabin of the airplane, and as they're getting onto the airplane, Lee says, say hello to Mother for me. And Mark Wahlberg's like, what? What are you talking about? What did he say? What did you say? What are you talking about? And nobody knows what's going on, and they close the cabin. What you have to understand here is that John Malkovich's character, his call sign on the radio is Mother. So they keep saying Mother. Much like in Aliens, the name of the computer was Mother. That is his call sign, is Mother. So then, after that, Mark Wahlberg walks away, and they've given the decryption algorithm key so that John Malkovich's team can start decrypting it. And of course, they start getting all the information, and they relay all that information over to the CIA and the NSA so that they can then move into action and save these lives. Well, all of a sudden, it's like a Trojan horse virus where all the information starts forming a picture. It's very much like the scene in Skyfall with Daniel Craig and Javier Bardem, where he gets the decryption algorithm to Q, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. And John Malkovich realizes that this is a security breach, a data breach, and so he kind of starts backtracking on all of this. And then we cut to a scene where this Russian president lady just says execute, again, because they're just bouncing back and forth between all these things. And I guess the algorithm triggered a location device or something like that, and these Russians bust into this secret command center where John Malkovich is, and they shoot everybody. And so then we cut back to the Russian president. She's opening her locket, and the locket is the picture of the boy that Mark Wahlberg killed. And so this guy wasn't just a double agent, he was a triple agent. So they wanted to get Overwatch initiated. They wanted the Overwatch team to be in play so that they could take them out. And this was all a mother's revenge against Overwatch for killing her son. Which leads to the next question. Is the Russian government in this movie getting back at them because they foiled a plot? In other words, was this lady's son part of this terrorist group, or was he undercover? Was he trying to bust them up and got caught up in the whirlwind of it all? The point is that you never want to mess with a mama bear. Mama bear got back at Overwatch. So this definitely leaves it open for a sequel. If they do a sequel, they really need to work on Mark Wahlberg's character. I mean, it's too much, too fast. They really need some development there. So as the plane is actually taking off, you hear the captain on the headphones say, "Oh my gosh, he's trying to take over the plane, oh my gosh," and you hear gunshots, blah, blah, blah. And then the radio goes dead. So then Mark Wahlberg is left on the runway looking up at this plane in the air, and he just realizes it. All throughout the movie, Mark Wahlberg is being interrogated. And so, you know how I feel about this, guys, where you jump around from time to time. And I guess the whole movie is being told by Mark Wahlberg as he's being interviewed to see exactly what happened. Because now everyone on the Overwatch team is dead. And they kind of close with John Malkovich sitting on a fountain, bleeding to death. So that's really where the movie ends. And I know that this podcast has been super, super short, but that's all that this movie was. You started in suburban America. They had a huge blow up. You go to the embassy. The guy turns himself in. There's a huge battle scene there. They get in the car. They start riding towards the airport. They get ambushed. They fight in this low-income housing building. And then they make it to the airport. That's really the movie. There was no development. There wasn't anything like that. So there's really not much to say about this. If you love gunshots, if you love bombs, if you love action, if you love explosions, if you love Mark Wahlberg, if you love John Malkovich, this is your movie. If you're OCD, this is your movie. But there's just no story behind it. It literally started and ended. I would not be surprised whatsoever if we actually see a sequel. All in all, I'm giving this movie a 4.5. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. It really makes me wonder that when you see these actors that are doing these press tours that they're promoting the movie, if they truly believe that this movie was worthwhile, or if they actually think it's crap and they're just, well, we spent all this money, now we got to do it. $35 million, that's not that's not chump change. Someone's going to have to pay for that. That's going to do it for this edition of GOAT Movies. I really want to thank you all again for listening. I really appreciate all the love and support. Remember that you can always reach out to us via email, goatmoviespc@gmail.com. That's goatmovies, plural, pc@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram @goatmoviespc, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks again.